the time of enslavement, darkness, and violence, they risked their young lives. On their shoulders, they were carrying Poland.
Przyszedł mężczyzna, był to Hilary Alter.
A man came. It was Hilary Alter with his daughter Liliana. She was actually the same height as me. I think she was a year younger than me, maybe not a whole year. They said goodbye, and it was a sorrowful memory. For many years, I still gave accounts of this. For example, to Poland or somewhere else, to Żych, to Poland, I would just well up with tears. I'd stop because I remembered this terrible emotion, how this father realized that he would never see his daughter again. Her father was courageous. He was not your typical Jew like Jews used to be before the war. He was a blonde-haired man with blue eyes, who even had documents arranged that he could have joined the partisans if he had managed to get out of that ghetto somehow. Still, he didn't, because he was probably in that Bund, a Jewish organization of sorts. In any case, he wasn't a poor, weak Jew, but a strong, more militant man. I remember him very well. Blue eyes and fair hair, and he cried as he was saying goodbye to his daughter. Terribly sad. It was winter, the end of 1941 already in any case, because since October 1941, it was established by the Germans that for all instances of helping a Jew in any way, you could be killed on the street, shot on the spot. It was enough to hand a slice of bread to a Jewish child to get the instant death penalty.
Jakby się podało kromkę chleba dziecku, na przykład żydowskiemu. Śmierć od razu. No i wracam do tej, jak oni się pożegnali.
So, back to the story. As they said their goodbyes, Mom said we had to change because Lilka was wearing such a green, conspicuous winter overcoat. I had a school coat from those resurrectionist nuns, where I used to attend before the war. It was navy blue with a claret collar and a navy beret with an edelweiss. And she told us to take these registration books in hand and go with our heads up. Lilka, of course, would carry the one with that Star of David, and we were to confidently walk towards the exit. I can't remember if there was a barrier there. There was a gate, but I don't remember how we got across anymore. Mom stayed behind. No one stopped us, and we did not show our passes. I don't know at all how it happened. Mom came back the next day, and can you imagine that for so many years, I never asked Mom how she got out of the ghetto? She had to get through some other way. After all, I remember very well those terrible, horrible sights in the ghetto. Those children dying, those corpses covered with newspapers, and the children being so skinny. When I entered that ghetto for the first, second, and third time with my mother, I couldn't understand that there were still decently dressed Jews because it was so early when I started going there. 1941, I think it was winter, the end of winter, or the beginning of 1942. I couldn't understand how adults were walking around, and there were children with legs like sticks begging in the street, sitting on those curbs. Some were almost too weak, falling over. I could not understand how those adults who were still alive somehow did not care. Well, the conditions there were terrible. You know, for me, it was unthinkable. It troubled me at first, and I didn't even admit it to my mother because I was brought up that way. You know, that you have to help people. That I couldn't understand how it happened that there were situations like this. How was this Jewish girl able to keep walking along with her head up, so well groomed, and she was passing a child dying? Oh, I couldn't come to terms with it, simply put.
Nie mogłam się z tym pogodzić po prostu. Zaczęło się nasze życie z Lilką.
Our life with Lilka began in this social building, where we had 2 rooms with a kitchen. It was a modern apartment. There were no nooks and crannies. There were pantries and other hiding places in the old town or some other old buildings. Here, there was only a cupboard under the window. It was the only place where we could hide Lilka, and that's how we made such a hiding place. One shelf consisted of 2 boards and a niche under the window. If we sensed danger, it was enough to move this board at the back of the cupboard to make a hiding place, which we would cover with, as I remember, this large clay pot for pickling cucumbers, some cookware, and other such things. Well, and Lilka got these documents. My mother got them made in the name of Krysia Wójcikovna. She was supposed to be my cousin. My mother's maiden name was Wójcikovna, so it was supposed to be someone from my mother's side. At first, she would sit in the next room, listening to friends attending these secret classes. But then my mother decided it was dangerous, and we no longer hosted these secret classes at our place. However, I still participated in them, and I had this book and notes, which Lilka would then read. I wanted to say that Lilka actually lived a normal life with us, because my mother thought that if we were discovered, or there was some other disaster, we would all die anyway. I mean all of us. Grandmother, mother, me and Lilka, and maybe even the next door neighbors, because it was a 3-story house. We lived on the 2nd floor in the middle apartment, and below us lived some lady. Her last name was Engel. We called her the German, and some German soldiers would come to her after curfew. It happened all the time until the uprising. The first couple of times it happened, it was terrible. The curfew was at 8. Everything, all the gates of the houses, were locked. When the German gendarmes would see someone on the street without documents to boot, they would immediately put that person in prison or simply shoot them right there in the street. So after curfew, everything was closed. When we heard footsteps on the staircase, because you could hear that someone wearing heavy, possibly military shoes was coming in, it meant that we were already in danger. We had this system developed so Lilka would immediately hide behind the fake shelf under the window in the pantry. And so we hear these heavy shoes getting closer and closer, passing the floor below where this German woman lived, continuing up the stairs. It was a horror of horrors. And we hear banging on our door. Grandma opens the door wide, and Lilka is barely 2 meters from the door, curled up in this cabinet. So she opens the door, and he asks for Frau Engel. My grandmother, relieved, comes out, goes to the staircase, and shows him that Frau Engel lives 1 floor below. Well, of course, we could not sleep until dawn. It was a terrible experience.
Oczywiście to już samą noc do białego rana, żeśmy oka nie zmrużyły. Straszne to było przeżycie. Przecież to był 3-piętrowy blok, na każdym podejście 3 lokale.
After all, it was a 3-story block of flats, 3 units on each floor. So how many families lived there? We all knew each other more or less. And some neighbor once asked my grandmother about this cousin of ours having such a dark complexion. And grandmother said she was sent to us by our family, somewhere from my daughter's side, that it was our cousin from far away, because her parents and grandmother were arrested and her father was shot. So now she is living at our place. But they must have guessed because Lilka was similar to a Jewish girl. Only her eyes were not black, but green, big with such long eyelashes. But she had black curly hair. She was a beautiful girl with beautiful lips. In general, a beautiful girl. In the meantime, Ryszard Grynberg, a Jewish boy a little older than Lilka and me, came and stayed with us for 2 or 3 days more than once. He lived in hiding at my aunt's house. He was in several locations, but among other places, he was also at my aunt's house on Złota Street in Warsaw. When it got too dangerous there, Germans rounding people up in the streets or something, he would get in a horse-drawn carriage. He was a brave boy. He would get in and come to Żoliborz to stay with us. So it wasn't just Lilka anymore. And once there was a manhunt in Żoliborz on Invalidów Square. You know, shooting, screams. It was summer, and we momentarily decided that we needed to run upstairs, all the way to the roof, and hide between the chimneys. And Ryszard was with us too. To climb up there, A ladder had to be placed from that third floor to reach the attic. And you see, there we sat through that roundup. Somehow, fortunately, 3 people with their documents who were in our apartment, and 2 more people, some old couple, spent the night at our house sleeping on the floor because there was no room. I only remember they opened a jar with herrings, and the smell of these herrings and onions spreading everywhere in our apartment. These people were just passing by because Jews were moved between hiding places all the time. They changed locations. They have moved around, so they wouldn't be in one place for too long. Only Lilka was with us for so long, from 1941 or 42 until the war's end, and she went through the underground army warfare with us and everything. All those Jews we rescued would meet in Praga after the war. You know, so much kissing.
Się spotkali na Pradze. No wie pani, całowanie było wszystko.
Young, free, idealistic. Thanks to them, we live in Poland, in a free Poland, out of gratitude for Poland. Subsidized by the Polish National Foundation.